I guess the big news of the week, at least for me, is the issue one victory for the Democrats, for the left, for anybody that cares about a person's right to choose when they want to end a pregnancy.
Yeah.
Uh, in Ohio, I mean, that was just really important, I think, not just for Ohio, not just for abortion, but for what it means electorally, honestly, for the Democrats going into next year's elections.
Yeah.
What was your reaction, Alex?
I mean, I was obviously very heartened by I was heartened by it, and I was glad at the result. I also, I'm not going to pretend that I predicted it, but it's not like I was shocked at the result, because I think this feels like something that we've been talking about for a while now. That on a lot of these issues that are treated as hot button or controversial or wedge issues, it's been the case for a while now that like the liberal side of the issue is just generally more popular even than the Democratic Party is. And it's not just reproductive rights. Like you can go down a sort of list of things that are treated as divisive in this country, including a lot of stuff that Democrats ostensibly support. And like the issues are often more popular than the politicians. And especially in places like the Midwest, you have a recent history, extensive recent history electorally of like ballot referenda and things like that, outperforming Democratic politicians themselves when it comes to labor, reproductive rights, and things like that.
And marijuana, there were a few
Marijuana,
moments.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on, we can all get behind that here. Everybody here can get behind that. But like, it is, it's really important, I think, as a lesson for the Democrats to learn, because the party branding, if the face of the party is Biden and Kamala Harris, like that's not a strong brand.
Right.
But if the face of the party are the issues that are widely popular, and you do that through ballot initiatives, especially because Arizona seems to be taking a page out of others' books on this, and they're going to do, or at least they're on track to potentially do an abortion ballot referendum, a ballot measure in November 2024, which would be massive because Arizona's a swing state. But like it just, that driving turnout via issues like abortion, that seems to be in the short term the only way that the Democrats are going to have success, and I think they can have success with it.
I think they absolutely can, and it's going to rely on something that I think some Democratic parties in the country are getting better at, but something that does not come naturally to old guard Democrats, and that is clarifying positions on the issues rather than muddying them. Rather than, it's like sort of the opposite of triangulating. The instinct for a lot of old guard Democrats is to blur the distinctions between the parties and then run on essentially people and personalities, to say we will find the most qualified candidate and we will blur the issues and people will vote for our most qualified candidate. And you look at the actual situation on the ground in a lot of the country right now, and something like the opposite approach is true. You want to clarify for the voters, this is what we stand for. This is what they stand for. That's actually a lot of work. There's a lot of work done to sort of muddy the distinctions between the parties, and especially when it comes to a lot of these issues that end up on ballot referenda, right? Like, there's been polling that says people just simply do not believe the actual Republican Party agenda, right? Like, they just don't actually believe they mean it. And when something like, these abortion referenda come up, that clarifies the issue. And instead of triangulating, instead of blurring distinctions, what you want to do is clarify for voters and say, like, we're the ones on the side of the thing that you like, and the other side is against it. And it like sounds simple, but it actually has historically been difficult.
And that was embedded both in the issue that was oh, nice shirt, by the way, WGA. I just saw that. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
That was embedded both in the issue of abortion that was being, adjudicated, I guess, like through this issue one measure to raise the threshold for constitutional amendments from a simple majority to 60% through ballot initiatives, and in the form, right? Because this was yet another effort by the Republican Party to rig the rules in favor of minoritarian rule. I mean, they've done that through gerrymandering. They've done that. They continue to do that through and the Democrats help them through the upholding of the filibuster in the Senate. Like, this is and through their stacking of the judiciary and their successful stacking of the Supreme Court. This is a hallmark of their strategy, and the only way that the Democrats seem to, be able to combat it is, as we say, the focus on the core of the issue that is so widely popular.
Yeah, and I think it goes to, again, probably a good sign for the success of that conservative strategy, or a good sign for the eventual defeat of that conservative strategy, that the tactic of picking fights in weirdly timed off-year elections in order to ensconce anti-majoritarian rules is kind of backfiring, because that's been something that's really, really hard to get normal people to fired up about, is the sort of anti-majoritarian tendencies of the right, and the sort of traditional Democratic response of well, just beat him at the ballot box just doesn't work when you're sort of systematically underrepresented in every level of government. So the fact that there has been success politically, messaging wise and turnout wise on what are treated as these sort of tactical and sometimes even sort of abstract issues of governance is, I mean, it's difficult to sustain that, but it's definitely a good sign.
Yeah, I don't think it's sustainable either. I mean, right now the Republicans are in a position where they have bumped up against, they finally found the bottom of the hole that they've dug themselves into.
Yeah.
And they got a bunch of treasure along the way, right? Which was, we're going to focus on turning out our base. And they were successful for decades with this strategy.
Yep.
And it's all about, giving the base what they want, no matter how absurd, how hateful, and then we'll be able to cut a bunch of taxes for the rich along the way. Win-win. And now, though, with Trump at the helm of the party, and with that imagery of January 6th, when you say people don't believe Republicans,
yeah,
but they have no choice but to believe them now.
Yeah.
That they're fine with overturning the election. They saw it in the flesh, and I think that abortion in January 6th, it's a good electoral strategy for Democrats.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks to sound like an accelerationist, but that's where you end up, just with the facts on the ground. But the fact is, they have shown in a way that gets through to just about everyone what they plan to do with power, how they plan to get power, and what they plan to do with it, and letting them show that themselves. You wish it hadn't come to that, but now that it has, you got to press the issue.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because that was, almost sometimes what the strategy was against Trump, right? When Hillary was running against him, give him enough rope to hang himself, but then he ended up actually being president.
Well, right.
Then he got the rope, saved some for his supporters with Mike Pence.
The problem with pursuing that as an intentional strategy is that it allows them to get all of these victories first.
Yes. Yeah.
But what the thing is, once those happen, you have to press the issue, and I just that's just sort of where we are now.
Exactly. Speaking of that guy named Trump,
I'm sorry, who again?
I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him, but
the guy from Home Alone, Alone 2. Yeah.
That guy, and The Apprentice, and The Celebrity Apprentice, which I mean, that's always fun to
Is this our
Real
Where Are They
Housewives
Now
on there.
segment? The Where Are They? Your
Yeah,
favorite?
it is. It is. It's now we're doing television critique.
Herschel, I'm not gay, but if I was,
I'd be gay for you.
but you're
Yeah.
fired.
And then flash forward, he's the Republican nominee for Senate. But like, it's just these Jack Smith. I'm not sure what your reaction was to the indictment. And I'm trying not to lib out here, but sometimes that's like how I grew up, and I reverted to that form. I read like a majority of that indictment, and you get a little bit of like legal excitement from it because it is very well crafted, and the arguments that are put forth are substantiated. The timeline's quite clear. The fact that the all of the charges can be applied to basically all of the accusations streamlines this trial process in a very neat way. Yeah. And the strategy of going for Trump first, not indicting the co-conspirators until after this is done, to streamline the process and not have the trials get intertwined. You know, once Giuliani's charged, which should be, you know, once Eastman is, once Jeff Clark and Sidney Powell, etc. But I found it to be impressive and hopefully effective.
Yeah, I mean, I have not read the entire indictment. I think I read part of the Times annotated one, but not the entire thing. But I think like, you know, there's no reason to fight the urge to live out because I think like you can live out within reason, right? Because I think it's rare enough that you know, sort of consequences happen to powerful people anyway in this society, that like even though, you know, there's a long way to go here still, I think like you can, you know, just be perfectly satisfied with seeing this play out the way it has, even if it came to some extent very, 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 very late. And so like, I think like everyone should feel free to allow themselves to enjoy bad consequences happening to Donald Trump without feeling like it makes them too lib.
Yeah, I mean,
do you think there's too much focus on like I see people moving too quickly to like, well, he's still gonna win the primary. It's like, yeah, he might. Like, I don't know that. I feel like that those are two disconnected things.
I mean, they have the connection of electoral consequences potentially for him in the primary, but like we can meet the moment of this guy's getting charged for basically trying to coup.
I don't think the prosecutors
States.
should be like, well, this might give him like an extra boost in the primary. Let's hold back on this. That's just like, that'd be an inappropriate way
I
to
agree.
go,
No, and that's actually, I think you're totally, because that's actually pundit brain speaking, right? When you look at anything that happens, and you say, what does this mean for Iowa? You know, like what does this mean in New Hampshire? That's like pure pundit brain. And obviously, like we shouldn't want like prosecutors to have that in mind when they're doing anything. But yeah, I mean, I think like
with that said, they do have it in mind.
They do obviously have it in mind, right?
Then I'm going to be cynical and say, I mean, they are trying to get this trial through as
well. They're
ASAP.
trying to,
and that's why they propose the trial date of January 2nd, and then Trump's going to counter. I'm sure they'll find some middle ground, right? But that's still pretty close to Super Tuesday, to be honest with you.
Yes. Yeah. But I think that it is also like a sort of trap to put yourself in the like everything is good news for Donald Trump mindset, right? Where it's like, I don't know, going to prison can be the best thing that happens to Donald Trump. Like I don't actually think that's true.
Right. No. Yeah. That would be bad.
I don't think
violating his bond agreement is exactly how he wanted to.
Yeah, and he though, like, man, I mean, Sam says it like this. This is an existential thing for him. He is running to save his own ass because I think that he's gonna get convicted on at least one of these or two counts. I mean, and I think it's fair to speculate because we this is a very different trial. It's one of the most important trials, arguably, in the history of the country. And but we have a lot of the facts already available to us based on reporting from the time. And we know that this stuff happened.
Yeah, no,
and
that's
so
yeah.
so once he gets, I think he will get convicted. And then that opens up like a real, I mean, we don't know what the future holds really, but it opens up a series of more questions about how the Republican Party is going to respond, how his supporters will respond,
how the state will respond,
how he will appeal. He will appeal to the Supreme Court most likely. I mean, what that looks like, we're just at the beginning of this complete shit show.
I mean, it could just definitely lead to some sort of insane constitutional crisis, like where, and not to speculate too much here, but obviously we've had people run for president from prison before, not to compare Trump to the great Eugene Debs.
Right.
Thank you, yes.
Just like him.
But because again, like nothing in the Constitution says you got to be out of jail to be president. Just like they didn't think of that when they wrote it. But
right.
the sort of elite mindset that like, well, it's just not done to lock up like people who might be president. That's just not done. Like that could become like a legal argument with some force behind it if it comes down to it, which is like not outside the realm of possibility, but also very bizarre thinking. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I agree with you that he will end up convicted on something, but beyond that, it's just like too many weird factors to even begin to predict anything.
You mentioned this earlier, but how this should have happened much earlier.
Right.
And it should have, but Merrick Garland didn't want to do anything. That's
you got to move forward.
This guy's like a ghost.
Turn the page.
That is his I mean, there's a reason he was an Obama appointee to the Supreme Court, and he has that kind of brain, and he did not want to get mired in the politics of it and what have you. But Bradley just sent this to me a few minutes ago. Garland appointed a special counsel, a man named David C. Weiss, the U.S. attorney in Delaware, to handle the Hunter Biden inquiry now. So we're having a separate special counsel investigation.
And just for
Hunter Biden.
And just for context, Weiss was the U.S. attorney, Trump appointed U.S. attorney in Delaware, who had handed down the tax and gun charges that Republicans were speculating, but there was foul play because he wasn't like appointed to be a special counsel in that investigation. So now it's seemingly, from my view, per some political pressure, because of the scuttled plea agreement, Garland is now, okay, I'll make Weiss a special counsel to sort of duck the claims that I wouldn't have made him a special counsel otherwise.
How many more Republicans are we going to appoint as special counsels to investigate these things, to prove the Republicans like wrong in this way, or make it seem super? I mean, I guess James Comer's just going to drop his probe now in the House. In the House, I mean. The Biden crime family, they're done with that, I'm sure. Yeah,
they're done. They've been appeased now. And I mean, it's the oldest joke in Washington. I mean, you can go back to the 90s. And you go back further. First of all, like, there's only ever been Republicans in charge of the FBI. Like, actual, card-carrying Republicans are the only people who've ever been in charge of the FBI. But, like, it's been a joke literally since Clinton that, like, in order to prove fairness, only Republicans are allowed to investigate anything. Which is bizarre. And so it leads to these situations where like Republican daddy, like lawmen are the ones who are like come in to take on these special investigations just to prove that there's no political bias here. And like when the Republican investigators go after Republican candidates, like no one is ever appeased by their political background. It has never worked once. To make the conservatives say, well, I guess this must be a totally fair and above board investigation because they put an old Republican guy in charge of it.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, wait, we were full of shit. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh yeah.
I guess we'll just keep it up.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, is Jack Smith am I mistaken? Jack Smith's a Republican, right?
I think he is. I'm 90% sure he is. Yeah.
Bradley's going to look that up, but
Yeah.
I mean, certainly Robert Mueller was.
Yep, Mueller was.
Oh, he's an independent. Jack Smith
Oh, okay.
is.
Independent, yeah.
Yeah.
That's sus.
Yeah.
He's actually
so
a Ron. He's a big
probably
Ron Paul guy.
Yeah. and like this is separate also from the other special counsel investigation that Merrick Garland okayed related to Biden, which is the
Right.
special counsel investigation of the documents, which was
Right.
another capitulation to Republicans saying, well, what about Biden? Even though the issue was not the possession of the classified documents.
Right.
That was never the issue.
Yeah.
Because they gave Trump a million opportunities to return them.
Yes, they were really, really begging him to, basically. They were like, please don't make us do anything.
Please don't make us prosecute you.
Please.
And Trump was like, I need my presidential horcruxes, please. And
They're
like,
we're gonna try as hard as we can to look the other way if you could just do us a little solid here.
It's like
And he was,
in the dorms, like, hey man, you borrowed my Lost season 6 box set.
yeah,
like,
can you
give
just
that back
return
to me?"
it?
I
Yeah.
don't want to make it a thing. I really don't want to make it a thing.
Yeah,
like, it's
but
cool.
I'd like it back. And Pence and Biden both returned everything voluntarily. So
Yeah.
we don't need a freaking special. Like, what is Merrick Garland good for, honestly, right now? Except for not being around, not being visible, and caving to right-wing, like, dishonest whataboutisms about Biden as it relates to Trump corruption. Like, honestly, this just emboldens them and makes their claims sound more legitimate than they are.
Yeah, and I mean, Merrick Garland is one of the most useless people in Washington right now. But yes, I mean, I don't know. I truly could not tell you what he's good for beyond what you just said. And again, like, the political theory, and this has been a political theory they've been testing for years and years and years. The political theory behind a Merrick Garland-like person is to lower the temperature of partisanship. And like, congratulations, has that worked? Has the temperature been lowered? We've tried this so many times, and it's nice and cool partisan-wise everywhere now.
Yeah. And I mean, you can just see too what can be when you appoint somebody who actually wants to fight to a cabinet position. We're seeing it with Lena Khan and the FTC, and like what a different vision of the Democratic Party would be. Like Lena Khan's she's a Warrenite, right, Bradley?
Yeah.
Or she's of the Warren school, Lena Khan. I'm 90% sure of that, but I just like to double check. Even a Warren presidency or something like that, or even moving the Democratic Party in that direction with more of those types of people, it makes a difference.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's definitely more of a sort of mindset and generational thing than even an ideological thing. It's because I do think that even fairly centrist Democrats who are just younger than Biden would not have gone with a Garland-like pick, right? And I think that is partly from learning the lessons of the Obama administration, but just learning the lessons of the last 20 years too, and like just like a preference for people who do something rather than do nothing does not have to be ideological, but it sort of is in the Democratic Party for some reason. But I think like there's a lot of younger non-Biden people who have just more of a preference for just doing literally anything at all rather than hiding.
Right. And I think it really was Biden's attempt to say, well, the Justice Department was so politicized under under Trump, and we're going to make it not so. And it just the value of that is to be, especially in a time when the Republicans are continuing down the path of being like this existential threat to democracy. It's just certainly not the time to defang yourself at one of the most important, at the highest level of like law enforcement in this country.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then, when you come in, when you're coming in after a presidency where you're saying they were trying to politicize everything, and then essentially they have and when conservatives get back in power, they're going to do everything they can to implement it, but they have a playbook to, replace civil servants with partisan hacks, like throughout the entire administrative state, like top to bottom. That's what their goal is. That's what their mission is. And when you come in, and you're like, I'm the caretaker president who's going to bring the temperature back down, and everything got too politicized, so we're going to depoliticize everything. Like, step one is not to just now declare this is a partisan-free zone. Step one is to clear house. That's step one.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You get rid of the hacks first. You go in there and you actually clean house. And in order to then say we are starting fresh, you don't just go in and be like, now that I've put a nice old man in charge, all the bad political things are going to be done now.
Yeah, it's childish.